for the regular city council meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Heller?
Here.
Counselor Eber?
Here.
Counselor Holen?
Here.
Counselor McGuire is absent. Counselor Robinson is absent. Counselor Fisher?
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Audience participation. Seeing none, we'll move on to reports from members of city boards and commissions. Also seeing none. The consent agenda.
I'd like to remove consent agenda item 6A, the minutes.
Okay.
Otherwise, I move approval of consent agenda item 6B.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Apologies,
Aye.
Mayor. I have one change, so would probably pull it from the consent agenda.
Oh, it's 6B?
Let me see if it's 6B. I got it.
The resolution or the minutes?
The minutes.
Oh, okay, so then we're voting on the resolution.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so are you an aye vote on the resolution then? Dave?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's unanimous. And we'll come back to consent agenda item 6A, the minutes.
And I'm glad that Councilor Heller wanted to pull it because I felt a little picayune doing this, but on page 5 of 6 of the minutes, it says Mayor Pro Tem Holm reported the city had received the government finance award for the 2026 budget. That's not what I did. I offered my congratulations to Kelly on the award of the city. And even though that's a bit picky, because it had already been reported, I wanted the congratulations to be in there.
All right, and then
Yeah,
Councilor
and
Heller.
mine's also a minor one, and sorry for the confusion, Mayor. Page 7, it's, if we could change it to say, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs down, Councilor Heller, reported on federal rulemaking regarding not boom technologies, but sonic boom regulation.
Right. Okay, any other changes? If not,
So move approval of consent agenda item 6A with as amended.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving on to unfinished business, an update regarding the Nexus study from Manager Black.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. So you'll recall back in March of this year, Council had approved a professional services agreement with Tischler Bice to complete a Nexus study for the city. So the initial report has been reviewed by P&Z, PTRC, and Council back on June 16th. So we're back tonight presenting the updated report. We have Colin McElweeny from Tischler Bice here with us to review all of the changes. Those include reviewing the discussion that Council had on the initial draft and the suggestions that we were able to incorporate. After Colin wraps up, staff will review next steps and request direction from Council. The agenda item, just to note, directly after this one is an extension to the moratorium. And just for everyone's reference, we do not have a pending application right now or any inquiries from any potential applicants. So we're not holding anyone up. Unless there are questions about any of that framework, I will turn it over to Colin.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Yeah, good evening. This is Colin McElweeny with Tischler Bice. I did miss the first presentation that Paul gave that sort of went through some of the sort of the nuts and bolts of the calculations and all of that. And we can get into that, but really wanted to sort of highlight just the sort of changes, maybe policy changes, but some calculation changes as well. That reflected into new results. Did review the recording of the June presentation, and as Emily mentioned, I wanted to sort of highlight some of the comments or inputs by City Council and the Mayor, and you know, some of those changes we were able to make, some we weren't able to, and I'll explain why. Just as a reminder, in the city's current subdivision policy, there's a land dedication being administered based on the size of the lot. 7.5% is dedicated over to the city, or a fee in lieu based on the value of the land. Our recommendation is to move from sort of that land-based approach to a population-based approach, just following state statute and common practices, best practices, professional expertise on how to best assess these exactions on new development. Pulled out state code here. Actually, I haven't seen it in a while. I've been doing this for 10 years. I didn't introduce myself, but do a lot of the work out here in the West. But specific to Colorado, the state statute 2920-104 sort of guides a lot of the impact fees, which is a sort of development-related fee to help pay for capital expenditure, which is similar to a land dedication policy. And as you can see here, local governments shall quantify the reasonable impacts of proposed developments on existing capital facilities and establish the impact fee or development charge would be that subdivision land dedication policy at a level no greater than necessary to defray such impacts directly related to the proposed development. So that kind of is that legal framework that we're using to move from that land-based sort of general exaction just based on the plot to a more sort of metric-driven, data-driven analysis that examines the true impact that's coming off of that subdivision. Did make some changes though from that June 16 presentation. Did sort of increase the levels of service. We bolster the inventory of the types of open spaces and parks that we included, and expanded the trail network that we included in there too. So that, in a sense, raised that acres that the city's providing to current residents. We did also review, there's a handful of sources out there for populations in Colorado. So you have the census, the decennial census, the 2020 decennial census, the 2024 census estimate, and then also the state demographer puts out census populations for every city. At the previous iteration, we were using the state demographer, but staff and myself felt we should review that and change it to the census population. And that was actually a slightly lower from the state demographer, and that does play a role in that level of service. That's the denominator in that equation there. And so that's slightly less from the first iteration that we had. Another previous iteration looked at housing types beyond single-family detached. So we had attached and multifamily in there. Just explored it. There was input from council to remove that. And so what you're going to see is just single-family detached here in that analysis. Again, I do have the inventories at the very end in the appendix of this presentation, but a little bit of change here. So we were looking at, I think, a total of 16 acres per 1,000 residents, including more inventory in there. Really, it was including more trails into the sort of that inventory we're using to calculate the current level of service. So we were at 16, and now it's 18 acres per 1,000. 81 acres for parks and open space, 33 acres. And that's kind of hard to imagine. We had linear feet and then the width of those trails as well to get acres. Estimated population, 6,300 residents, and we just essentially divide that inventory by the population to get a level of service. One comment from the previous presentation was, can we use private land in this analysis? Unfortunately, I just sort of pulled out another definition here by the state statute that public facilities directly related to any service that a local government is authorized to provide. So really only looking at that public land, not expanding that into privately held land. So broken down, 12, 13 acres per 1,000 for park and open space. Fiber trails, that's where we get the total 18. Here's the persons per housing unit analysis. This is going to look really similar, and just sort of pulled out this figure from the report. This did have single-family detached, attached, and multifamily on that, so remove those items to make sure there's a bit more clarity there. Importantly, there's some definitions within the realm of municipal finance and land use for demand units, also known as service units. We're using population or residents as that metric of the demand coming off of new residential development. So the service unit here is population. We're trying to find how many residents come from a housing unit on average, a single-family detached home in Cherry Hills. And we did didn't want to go into the nitty-gritty here, but we had sort of unadjusted single-family detached persons per household factors for the PUM area, that sort of larger area, and then calibrated it up actually for Cherry Hills. So that's where we got the 3.00 people per single-family home within Cherry Hills. Did note as well, there was a good discussion on can we assess the subdivision land use policy on not by the type of home, but maybe the size of home. And that was a great discussion because that's really where a lot of these other exactions are going towards, capital expansion fees, impact fees, because generally smaller homes are going to have less people, less demand on public infrastructure. Unfortunately, at the subdivision level, we don't know the size or the number of bedrooms of those homes, of that future home, and so we can only determine the type of home, but not the size of the home. But a great discussion, and worth thinking about if the city were to go down to like the impact fee process. We also had this comps table. Didn't change too much. That 18 or the 16 acres became 18 acres. You can see your current policy. You're one of the few that are charging based on the land based approach, the population based approach there. National average is about 10 acres per thousand, so near double that. What was asked is to see if we could find any of the nexus studies, is what we call it, for these other communities in here. We weren't able to do that for any of these. We sort of scoured their public records on their website and their ordinances. And also their ordinances, some of them you kind of indicated had been a few decades that they hadn't been updated. And both of those elements do bring about some legal defensibility concerns. You want to report in hand that details, the numbers and the calculations, but then also not updating it within a few decades. Things have changed, obviously, in those times too. And so you'll see in our report, one of the recommendations is to do a 5 or 10-year cadence in these updating of these policies, because your demographics change. If you get a park and open space master plan, those priorities change, and you want these sort of exaction policies to change with that. Paul had a few examples. I only sort of brought forward one here. This was I guess more of a real life example. This was a 2 acre lot that was subdivided recently. Value of that land was $1 million. The max of that fee in lieu was $156,000 under the current policy. Future policy or sort of the recommendation going to that population-based would bring about $56,000, or about a third of that. So it's kind of interesting. Usually when we do these studies, that fee in lieu or that dedication actually goes up. But in these examples where larger lots, the city may actually get less dedication, just trying to make this as airtight as possible as approach. Interesting enough, I didn't want to sort of call it out because it's more hypothetical, but these are looking at just splitting one lot into two, and 2 single-family homes being on that lot. If that lot split into 4, let's say, the number of homes off of that same acreage, the numbers would look different. You'd actually probably see more cash in lieu under the new approach compared to the previous approach. Oh, yeah. And so that was all the slides I had. Wanted to maybe open up for discussions before next steps.
All right, does anybody I have a couple comments, but I'll
Just one really basic question, and really quality question, quality assurance. Is Quincy Farms in the acreage that you, just want to verify that, I didn't see the list.
Yes.
It's in there.
Yes,
Okay.
it is included.
And I guess while that slide is up, that was one of my questions. Just, I know there was quite a bit of discussion at the last meeting. This is probably mostly for you, Emily. And we talked about, should we include this and should we include that trail and and I know that it looks like you did go back and adjust that inventory. Can you just point out specifically what the additions were? Do you know off the top of your head? Yeah.
Sure. So we went through and basically scoured our Parks and Trails inventory to make sure that we had everything possible, kind of pushing it up to the line of what's defensible. So in the Parks side, Jackson Street, the very last one, those are 2 parcels that the city owns at the end of Jackson Street, which is sort of up near Covington Drive, and it backs to the Highline Canal. So those are potential future open space, but it isn't developed in any way or open to the public right now. It's a little bit overgrown. So we did include that in the park inventory as, something that the city holds. And then I won't go parcel by parcel for the trails, but a summary is that we went ahead and included all of the easements, trail easements that the city holds, that even if they're not developed into a trail yet. So we incorporated that area, and then we also went through all of the paved trails along Quincy, Holly, and Clarkson, where they are not bike lanes, basically. Because in discussions with Tischler Bice, that's sort of where that line is. If it's a bike lane, it's considered part of the roadway. But so everywhere that trail separates, so if you're thinking, going down Quincy where you're going along Kent and it's separated by, there's some tree lawn there. And I calculated all that square footage to include that in the trail acreage as well.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
And then here it says Buell Lake excluding the lake. Why is the lake excluded?
The city does not actually hold, the lake is cut out of the city's open space holdings. It went back and forth when the subdivision was created, and Buell had originally given the lake to the city and then realized they, for water rights reasons and other considerations, they wanted to keep the lake, they took the lake back. So the city just maintains around it, and Buell actually maintains the lake.
It's actually
itself.
posted, Mayor, as residents only accessing the lake off the trail. So.
Okay.
Yeah, the lake is fishing for residents only.
Yep, okay. I think one of my other comments, and this is on page 6 of the memo, and I think the only place this shows up is in the memo. I don't think it shows up in the actual draft report. But I know some of my comments was just around the assertion that parks are a function of people, and I feel strongly that open space is not a function of people. It shows up in the report, and so I would just be more comfortable if we just didn't say it. If we just said,
But
I don't know, but.
But isn't this statement here, isn't it related more towards land dedication requirement versus population-based?
Well, I think,
that was the
I think what
context.
it's trying to do is make the case for using a population model.
Exactly.
But I don't know that we need to make that case, and I don't know that we need to make that statement. I think it's just saying we're going to switch to a population-based model. We don't need to say because we think park space is a function of people. We just need to say we're going to use this model because it's best practice, or because, right, or it's more in line with the legal requirements or whatever. I would never want, for example, someone to come back and say, well, you haven't had any population growth in Cherry Hills Village, so why are you buying that lot and turning it into open space? Because you said it's a function of people. Right? It's just not important to make that statement, and I would rather not make it.
May
And
I-
if it is in the draft report.
Well, I was going to
either-
say, because there's other documents here as well. We have the ordinance itself. I think what we can do is move forward with enough context that doesn't get into that, frankly.
Right.
We just don't even need to go there.
That's my
So-
point, is that
yeah,
I just
so-
I don't want to make that statement.
So we will effort on both the report and the ordinance to reflect
Okay.
that.
And then my last comment that I just wanted to understand a little bit more is the topic of the guest houses. And it's presented, and there's a summary of the discussion and the response. And I guess I just don't agree with the response. I think that it's basically saying, well, we've never done it that way, so we're not going to do it this way. I still feel strongly that our assumptions need to be based on what is allowed to be constructed in that zone on that lot. And here's the example I would use. If we had, say, for example, multifamily zoning, and the way this model would work is that you would say, okay, if you're subdividing, you can put 10 units on a lot that size based on the zoning requirements, right? And that number would be plugged in and calculated. In certain zone districts, we allow 2 dwelling units on any given lot. And just saying that however, the city has not historically assumed that each new lot that is created will have a guest house. We're not assuming that now either. We're saying it could. If you subdivide, you could build 2 dwelling units on that lot. In R1 and R2 and R3, I don't know. But anyway, just in those zones. And so I feel pretty strongly that in those zones, if you're subdividing in those zones, we should be using the number of 2 dwelling units instead of 1, because that's what's allowed. But
And Mayor, yeah, just to
Yeah.
add some even more flavor and context, under an impact fee approach, not to say to hire us even further, but because unfortunately what we're talking about is subdividing open land, and unknowns in those cases. Impact fees are collected when the building permit is issued, and at that point you would have an understanding of, is there 1 or 2 or how many dwelling units there are, and an impact fee could be based on the number of dwelling units or the size or how many bedrooms there may be, and still be able to collect a very similar fee in lieu as you would in a policy like you're seeing here.
right.
They don't work in tandem. It's either one or the other. So when we do an impact fee for parkland, sometimes it replaces a park land dedication through the subdivision
Right.
policy, but sort of one and the same. But you'd be able to capture instances like that.
And I do understand that, and I understand the distinction, and I know that we don't have impact fees. But I guess what I don't understand is why this is based on a population impact. We are assuming, based on averages, including existing guest houses and everything, on average, there's 3 people per dwelling unit. When you subdivide, and we're using math to say when you subdivide, you're allowed to build 1 dwelling unit, therefore you get 3 more people. But really, the potential is to get 6 more people. And so that makes sense to me. I don't know, and if I'm the only one, I can be the only one, but.
Sense, I mean, the potential, and it is the potential.
Yes, well, and that's the way the formula is now. It already says, okay, at 1 new dwelling unit, on average, it's going to be 3 people. Well, it might be 1, it might be 5. We don't know, and so we're just working on averages, but there's the potential to add 6 people anytime you subdivide 2 R1, R2, and maybe R3 lots.
I see your point, but I think the impact fee might be a better way to go to bolster our perks fund, because I'm not sure, could we do both?
Usually it's one or, sorry,
Yeah.
Councilman.
Sorry, I was looking at-
Oh, yeah. Usually,
Council.
usually it's one or the other. I mean, we say you don't want to double dip. So,
Right.
yeah, you don't want to
And we
collect
know-
land in the subdivision process and then also collect an impact fee
Right.
for also land.
And we have so few. Emily, in the beginning, you said there were none pending, but like just off the top of your head, over the last 10 years, how many people have subdivided or?
We've had the one that council considered earlier, and the one before that, the last major subdivision was the Calkins subdivision that was 10 years ago.
Okay.
And it was on Quincy, it was divided into five, not, five, lot, 9 lot? I don't know.
17 acres divided, I thought they were going to average 3 acres, so 18 divided by 3, 6.
Okay.
5 or
Well, something like that, but they were,
I
yeah.
thought it was 7 lots.
So I don't, and we did talk about impact fees for things like police and roads, and that's different, right? We don't have any of that right now, and that's something that if the city wanted to consider in the future, that's a whole nother conversation. So I get that this is focused around parks and open space. I just feel like the number of people, the potential population increase from a subdivision is 6 people, not 3 people.
So from a legal perspective,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Well, from a legal perspective, unfortunately, it's being more conservative with interpretation and saying, for most cases, it's one unit on that, R1, R2, R3, and so at a subdivision level, we're just going to assess it as one unit. You could, you could maybe include some sort of discretion that would allow council to review that dedication if 2 dwelling units were to.
So what if, just exploring this out, so it's not all of our zone districts where this would be the case, the number of lots would not be that many. However, it wouldn't take much for us to calculate a percentage of our eligible lots that have 2 dwelling units, establishing a baseline percentage of the number, because I know that it probably doesn't put us in a great position to charge for, a guest house when somebody doesn't build a guest house, right?
Right.
So if we then built in the percentage aspect of this that the mayor just described, let's say 40% of eligible lots have a second dwelling unit, could we then fold that into the baseline number so that we're charging right off the top? We're accounting for a percentage of these will likely have a guest house.
So, and do you need to, my understanding is that it's rough proportionality, right? Do we really need to drill down and say, well, of the ones who can, this is how many do? Because we only get one chance to charge this fee. It's when the land is subdivided. They may not build another dwelling unit on it right now. They may not build another dwelling unit, but in 10 years, they can and add 3 more people with no impact fee, no park dedication. That's why I feel like the number of dwelling units that is allowed, because we don't know what they're going to build when they subdivide. They may not know, right? The Calkins property was subdivided 10 years ago, and they haven't built anything. So I just feel like this is our one chance, and they can potentially build 2 dwelling units and add 6 people. And I think that we should do that, and I think that sounds rational and legally defensible. I'd have to defer to the city attorney, but I don't know, or to our consultant.
To expand upon that, it would be like distinctly clear that you're assessing above and beyond that sort of the impact coming from a single-family home. If it's clear that it's, we're charging you 1.5 because of the potential, and there's this level of proportionality, and you see this with there's a recent U.S. Supreme Court case, Sheets versus El Dorado County, where it's specific to, how granular do we have to get when we assess these exactions? Do we do it case by case, or do we do broad averages? And Supreme Court made it pretty clear that you can't use too broad of a brush. You have to be, you have to sharpen your pencils a little bit. And I think doing one single family home plus 40% more, just broad brush may be a bit aggressive.
Well, okay, but what if it's not universal? It's only on lots that allow, it's not every lot that allows a second unit. So in R1, if you're subdividing into R1, R2, or R3,
Just R1 and R2.
oh, it's just R1 and R2? Okay, so if you're subdividing into those, this is your fee because you can have 2 dwelling units, and if it's any of the rest, you don't. Does that?
Well, and
does
let
that
me
meet
ask
the
this question.
standard? I don't know.
But when you go through a subdivision process, you have no idea whether or not they're going to build anything.
Right.
And so the concept is, and I like where Mayor is going on this, is that you're asking for an impact fee based on the subdivision process period. And there might be no house built. We use the average of a unit of 3 people, but the reality is we are assessing on a potential of a lot. We just happen to assign that it is only 1. I think what Mayor is arguing and stating is the potential that is there as a result of that subdivision is not 1, but 2, at your average of 3. So what we're really doing is saying there is a potential, it may not happen, but it may not have any homes. But
You still have to pay it even if you
You still
don't.
make that fee. So I'm coming around to the idea that you base your fee on the maximum level, not the minimum.
I mean, I'd like Mr. McElwain to speak to why maybe the maximum is not necessarily something that you would factor in, and to address, have you ever seen or another community venture down this road?
Well, yeah, that's a wonderful question that, and I was going to.
Well, in addition,
Yeah.
let's take out the words maximum and minimum.
Yeah,
And
it's
let's
not-
talk about legally permissible,
Yeah. And it's
Because that
average,
gets
it's not a
away from-
maximum, it's an average.
right?
Yeah.
This would be, to your second question, I think you'd be the first in the state. To my knowledge, I don't work at every single city in Colorado in the Front Range, but for the most part, unfortunately, there are cases like we're talking about, and every city would have these unique cases that are going to exceed the defensibility and what we're seeing in the averages, and there's going to be cases that are below, when they don't build a home, and so typically that's where we fall in the middle there, to ensure that we're not overextending ourselves. Even if 40% of the time there's going to be another dwelling unit on there, there might be better tools in a city's toolkit to try and assess that more proportionately compared to this subdivision policy.
Mayor, I like your line of questioning as well, but I want to pick up a little bit more on what Earl said. So we are limiting by zone 1 and 2s, it's not the whole city. And we did, I think what was discussed is extrapolate the current population to the go-forward forecast or methodology. Is that legally permissible, those 2 limitations? So it's not 100% both in terms of the zonal distinctions, and it's not 100% in terms of all lots in their future subdivision. Does that pass muster? I think that's the question you were asking.
I joke I didn't pass the bar, but in my professional expertise, it'd be hard for me to defend that. If this is broad,
And then what could you defend besides just 1 dwelling per?
Typically, this is as far as we go. I mean, I don't know to put it more eloquently, but because you're thinking again, this is very common where if we do these sort of park impact fees, land dedications, SAFs, all these sort of exactions, and we show there's 2.5 people in a single family home. I hear in, Aurora, whoa, or 2 people in an apartment. Well, I know, there's 8 people living in that apartment. Why can't we charge them for the 8, not the 2? And it's, unfortunately, these sort of laws of averages that we have to fall back on. And, truthfully, we do have to be sometimes conservative and not overextend ourselves to, sort of abundance of care to make sure that we're not challenged.
Just one other question, not to
Yeah.
cross-examine or the like,
Yeah.
but how long have ADUs been around?
Well, they've been around for a long time, but we've allowed them for forever.
I'd have to research that because in our current code, it only reflects back to the code update in
Yeah,
2019.
and my
But
question
it has
is
been
the-
probably since 2013, I can probably attest
Yeah,
to.
my question is the advent of ADUs incongruent with the practice that you're describing? And
Well, so here's a question. And I know we took all this stuff out of here, and I don't have the previous version handy. But let's talk for a second about, we have a new zoning category that allows duplexes. Wouldn't that, in this context, just mean that you put in a number 2 instead of a 1? Because you now have 2 houses because it's a duplex?
Well, unfortunately, in that scenario, it does actually fall beyond the bounds of the policy of, we're just looking at single-family detached. Because if you recall, typically, right, three people for single-family detached, let's say 2.5 for attached.
Okay, so there would be maybe a
townhouse,
different
and-
average people per unit if it was a duplex.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is that's a different kettle of fish, right? And so it's just, it requires a different analysis. And that's pretty much what I'm hearing you say for the guest houses too, right? And your response, I think, says if you didn't consider that as part of this scope of work.
Right, and during these land dedication studies, we unfortunately don't, because the unknowns are too unknown, right? When we're sort of, if it's large-scale subdivision or small-scale subdivision. Now we are sort of in a new era, when states are now sort of allowing, single-family zoning to include, up to 3 dwelling units,
Yeah.
let's say, right? And so that sort of kind of bucks the trend a little bit. And really, these land dedication policies do, form more within a traditional subdivision or suburban growth pattern. They do sort of fall short sometimes, in my perspective, when we're talking even density, when we're talking like a ADU or a guest house, because of these sort of missed items, yeah.
Well, and I think ultimately, and I absolutely appreciate the wisdom that you bring, and I appreciate this discussion. But I will say ultimately, I think this is a council decision about, how legally defensible we feel, what the numbers are. And I personally feel like I'd be more than happy to go to a court and say, yes, that allows 2 dwelling units, and so we use the number 2. I don't think somebody would bring a lawsuit based on that, because I don't think it's a slam dunk that they'd win.
So are we saying then that we want staff to look into that a little bit more? Again, I appreciate your wisdom too, you've already got it, but maybe there needs to be some more discussion about it as you go to the.
I tend to agree, Counselor Holland. I think that this is kind of separate from, right? This is another sort of subcategory, and the analysis wasn't really
Right.
scoped for that.
Right.
And so I hear what you're saying. I guess to your point, Mayor, about going to court, I guess if we didn't do anything separate, would you be comfortable being an expert witness with just some rough addition, some methodology that you created, without a separate analysis?
Well, before we answer that, though, I guess I would prefer not to have that answer on the record, but, that's a question for later on. I think if we understand what you're saying, and, if we need an expert witness later, we'll ask you whether or not you can be an expert witness to support or not.
Yeah, and
But
yeah, that's a good point.
But I think, the question is when we look at this, are we comfortable with the analysis they provided?
Right.
Or would we like to see them make that change to a different number? And if the answer is yes, can they still sign the document? Or is that, at that point, say, sorry, we can't offer that opinion, but we can get there later?
Well, and
when we need
actually,
to.
that opinion doesn't even really show up in here, right? The draft document goes through the exercise of what's the population, how many housing units, how many people per housing unit. We recommend that you move to a population-based model. And I think I've heard that we're all okay with that, right? That those numbers make sense. We've now tweaked the inventory of trails to a point that we're comfortable with. Whether we write an ordinance that says we count R1 and R2 as one dwelling unit or two dwelling units, that's not in here. That's a council discussion and a staff ordinance discussion. And so I think, to your point, like, I think we can probably
Well, and
say
in
we're
fact, let me
getting
just ask,
comfortable
and I
with
don't
this.
remember seeing it in there. We do have properties with two dwelling units on them now. Was that counted? Were those counted as two separate dwelling units on that one property? Were ADUs counted as a separate dwelling unit?
That's not how the methodology works.
Yeah, but usually.
I didn't think so,
yeah.
but that's why I'm asking, because I don't remember, I mean.
No, I mean, we didn't go through a parcel by parcel survey
Right.
and did a
So-
population
Right.
count. There's assumptions.
Yeah, usually the census is going to, but we're using the population, which would, those.
Divide.
Yeah, would get into that, yeah.
But that actually, though, gets again to a little bit more what there is estimates, there are approximations that are going on here. It's just a question of where do we want that line of the approximation to be, I think, at the
Yeah,
end of the
Chris,
day.
I thought you had
And
said.
the point is, let me just, and
Oh, yeah,
something
please.
that Councilor Eber said, are we comfortable with it? I'm comfortable with this. The question then is, but is there a way to get a bit more aggressive? And the mayor has laid that out, and so the point is, I'm very comfortable with this, but are we missing something that we might be able to take it up a notch?
And I
Chris, I
think
thought
the
you-
recommendation is to, conduct a separate nexus study.
Or,
Right?
yeah, I mean, in these grays, communities, city councils, will do their own policies, exactly.
Separate from this
yeah,
report.
From a nexus study.
So that's why, I guess what I was going to say, and I look to you to metaphorically kick me under the table if this is how you think this might be best handled. We've been just kicking around over here, other ways to maybe get at this, other than how you've talked about it, but that still kind of gets at it the same way. I don't even really want to put that out here for right now. My recommendation to you is let us move forward with the base study as the mayor just laid out and keep on the schedule that we have, because even with the extended moratorium, tick-tock, tick-tock.
Right.
In the meantime, let us dive into alternative ways to account for this increased population. I think it could actually take a few forms. We need to vet that out a little bit more. Maybe we attach it to this, or maybe we come up with a separate parallel way that isn't beholden to the moratorium deadline.
Right. And I think that works, because this report and this Nexus study, like I said, doesn't say anything about how to calculate the math. It establishes a current level of service, how many acres, how many people, does the math, this many acres per person, et cetera. How we calculate the number of people and et cetera is, and it also says average number of people per dwelling unit. How we address how many dwelling units it is 100% based on our zoning and has nothing to do with this, right? If we had multifamily zoning, it would have been, the math in here would have been different, but it would just still say it's an average of this number of people, except for this type of
We
housing.
would go through the exercise.
Right, that's all, and it just says people per housing and acres per person and whatever. So I think we can move forward with this.
Yeah.
And then maybe this is, more of a council discussion with staff around how the ordinance is worded to assess that fee based on the data that is in here.
Well, we'll likely still lean upon the expertise that we have,
Right, right.
already to explore different ways of going about that, what the options might be. Does that sound okay with you?
Oh, yeah, and, it's common too to have a sort of standalone ADU guest house, additional dwelling unit, accessory dwelling unit kind of policy that, now we talk about, land dedication and how we're addressing that, but maybe other items that the city council, wants to address, in a standalone policy.
I mean, I think unfortunately, given the direction of our state legislature right now, there is potential that every single one of our lots is now actually multifamily zoned, right? And
Right.
so I think that's a real, we need a policy that contemplates that possibility and still steers us in the proper direction and still has the rough proportionality and meets the guidelines, but with the possibility that that could be the reality. So, okay.
Hey,
Well,
one thing, when we're looking at the parks, and this would only change it slightly, but the triangle over off of Hamden, I mean, I don't see that in here.
Jay, microphone.
yeah.
We did look at that. That property was purchased from CDOT. It was not purchased with park property, and we've never used it as a park. It's actually in the city of Inglewood.
Oh,
We own it, but it's not parkland per se.
And it's not within our borders?
I
It's
just want to
not.
make sure you're talking about the vacant on the south side of Hampton.
Yes.
Okay.
So the shopping center that is in Cherry Hills, it's vice versa. It crosses over, and that piece on the south side is in Inglewood, the piece on the north side is in Cherry Hills.
Well, that's just bizarre, but okay. I mean, I guess what I
looked
would
at
say
it.
is,
We did
the fact that it's never been used as park isn't an issue, because it is open space. But if it's not in our city, then I
Yeah.
don't think we can count that.
That was the crux of the problem.
And we're also going to include Wash Park, and we're going to include.
We need to annex some things.
If you want to just look on the zoning map, which there's a link directly from the homepage, you can see very clearly that that southern triangle is not included.
Okay.
So it's the mirror image, to Jay's point, it's the mirror image of the retail. And so the zoning map will show it very clearly.
Okay, so I think to summarize, I think that we are satisfied with the work that Tischler Bice has done in this draft document, and that we don't have any changes to make to this document.
Mayor,
Yes,
sorry.
yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead to the conclusion, but there was a question in an area of investigation I want to go to about the current level of service
Oh, okay.
appendix that you have there. And I want to understand a little, so we upped our acreage slightly. And I want to go back, Emily, you made the comment that if something is an on-street trail, it was not included because it's considered to be part of the road, which is in the right-of-way?
If
Is that
something
what
was
makes
a,
it,
sorry,
is that what makes it a road thing?
no. Areas where there's a bike lane, so where there's a bike lane adjacent to Quincy, those we did not count as a separate trail. The areas where those bike lanes leave the roadway and they actually become a separated trail, still paved, but there's a tree lawn or there's grass or like a little strip of dirt to separate it from the road, that's what we counted as a trail.
And is that I guess I never thought of that as a bike lane. I always thought of that as a trail. Is that a bike lane, that Quincy path?
It depends on where it is.
But if it's an on-street trail, does that mean Holly and Quincy on Holly Street at the top before it's formally separated as you go south on Holly Street. It's part of the roadway. There's no separation,
Correct.
but we call it an on-street trail
We don't call anything an on-street trail at this time.
in the old days.
Does it show up on the trail map as a trail or a bike lane? I mean, I didn't
We
know we
did
had
not.
bike lanes. Other
So
than,
we didn't go through on the trail map and differentiate because it was that level of detail on our trail map with how many trails we have was just not a feasible
okay.
Well,
thing. So trails
and
are shown just by surface on the trail map since that's per our consultant and ADA requirements, like that's the most useful thing to show on the map is what the surface is, but then it doesn't differentiate where it's a bike lane, where it's a separated trail.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, this is way more detailed than the words rough proportionality ever implied to me. That 5 feet of it is touching a street, so that's this, and I've never referred to anything in Cherry Hills Village as a bike lane, well, really nothing as a bike lane. Where do we have any bike lanes? Where? I mean, on Happy Canyon, there was a request to paint it green, like bike lanes are painted, and we never did.
I think that there's some practical considerations when it is a part of the roadway that we received information from the consultant
Okay.
that that's a problem. The reason part of me agrees with you that it feels, oh my God, we're getting into this 5 feet in, 5 feet out. Well, we're making that calculation to squeeze every last bit out of it that we can.
well,
Except that you could just say this is a trail, not a bike lane, and
Well, that was the
therefore
part
we
that I
include
think-
all of it. But I mean, here, we are really splitting hairs about the number of, we're talking feet here. I mean, it's,
Oh, trust me, we are talking feet.
right, and so I
So the
can live with this the way it is, but,
So the exercise that we went through in consultation with Tischler Bice was basically asking our consultant, how do we squeeze every last drop
right.
of trail and park acreage out of what we have? And per their guidance, this is where we ended up. So it is getting into splitting hairs. We don't typically call them bike lanes, but we're going with what we think is going to be the most defensible going forward.
okay, so with that, I understand on that, but where I was going is many of us have already heard me talk about Mansfield as an example with a very wide right-of-way. And never heard me talk about that, I'm sorry. Let me start all
Sorry,
over
what?
again. Let me start all over again for you.
Man who?
We'll be here till midnight, but that's okay. But, obviously, if the city wanted to narrow the actual roadway and build a dedicated path for a bike or for people on these, what are currently wide roads with wide right-of-ways, that would add additional acreage. We can argue about whether it's Mansfield alone or whether, I look at Mansfield, I look at Oxford, I look at trail connector type of ideas, Parkway and Middle Road. I'm sure all of us can there's a very wide road behind St. Mary's Academy that could be a trail link as well. There are probably others, but what I'm saying is, if all it takes is a 1-foot strip of dirt to then have to spend a lot of money to build a trail, and if the city decides we want to do that, can we probably have to go through a formal process to designate those as trails to be developed in the future before we can add them to our area. But if we did that, we could then, or the impact of doing that would be to raise our trail area number, which then goes through the calculation to lead to a higher impact fee if you're adding more acres.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why you would want to update these, every 5, 8, 10 years because of the investment that you're talking about. That would be increasing levels of service, which would allow that defensible number to go up. The 18 becomes 20.
So this is the current level of service, but yes, if we went and built some new trails, then we would want to go back and update this to the new current level of service, and that would change all the numbers. But we can't use a future level of service.
But so you're doing it retroactively, Mayor, that says, we built these trails, therefore the impact needs to be passed through.
So our
And
current
I'm
level
doing-
of service is
But
changed.
I'm doing the opposite. And it's sort of like
Yeah.
what happens when a developer looks and says, well, there's gonna be 412 acres when it's built out, and that city does a pricing based on that. I'm saying, before we adopt this in an ordinance, we may want to go through an effort as a city to add these to our trail system. And I use that bluntly, I mean broadly. And then, that is the current level of service, am I right?
Yeah.
And then it leads to a different number, but I'm concerned about the timing delay.
I understand.
Because by the time we go through this exercise and Jay will tell me it's gonna cost X dollars to put all these new parks or trails into the city, and we need 5 years to do that, or I don't know how long it would take to adopt those even. But in the meantime, we're not having a new.
But I think that's why we
calculation.
probably have to move forward with this. And then, because it will take time to do what you're talking about, but I agree that that probably should be done. And then, when it is done, we can go back and update this. The recommendation has been, 5 to 10, but we can
But then it's
update it
changing
whenever
up.
we want, right? If there's a major change, we could go update it next year.
Because the formula isn't changing, it's just the inputs are changing at that point.
That's right, and you would just
So-
say, you would keep this same thing, and you would say, okay, well, now the total acreage is this, and plug it into the formula, and here it comes. And so this, I think, by adopting this as it is, we meet our time constraints for the moratorium, et cetera, and then, a potential future work plan item would be to identify, and given some other conversations we've had, identify future parks and/or trails, put that into some sort of formalized plan, and then update this accordingly. And, in the reality, there aren't that many properties left that are eligible for subdivision. All of that can probably happen before we ever even see another one.
Yeah, and that's a great example, along with investment, to bring on new acreage, not just because of population growth, just because of the desire to raise those levels of service. Another example would be putting together that open space park trail master plan that would have that, the city adopted park, open space trail level of service. That theoretically would be higher than what we're seeing right here, and then, then putting that into the subdivision policy.
Colin, I think I've worked in communities that did use future park land and trail plans as the basis for these kinds of fees. But if I recall correctly, every community I've worked at that uses those are developing communities, and they rely more heavily on impact fees as opposed to fee in lieu of land dedication. And so that really highlights why I think that would be a separate conversation altogether. I'm not saying it's not valid,
Yeah.
Councilor Eber. I'm not saying it's not valid. I just think that it's more likely to be an impact fee that would be a separate conversation from this one.
Yeah, okay. So then, so to bring it back, I think we're comfortable with this and that we're not asking for any further changes to the analysis that's been done. But direction to staff is to not make any unnecessary statements about that, and then, to have continued discussion about how these findings get plugged into our ordinance moving forward and how that ordinance is drafted moving forward. Everyone agree that that's where we are? Okay, awesome.
Wonderful.
Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you for your
discussion.
expertise and
Yeah.
input, and
Yeah. Might be,
discussions.
not be the last time you see me. I guess.
thank you. All right. Moving on to the next item, which is the extension, Council Bill 7, Series 2026, extending the temporary moratorium on the acceptance and processing of new applications, seeking the approval of a subdivision on first reading for Manager Black.
Thank you for reading all of that for me. So on December 10th, council approved that moratorium on first reading and then affirmed it again on February 3rd of this year. So this was a 9-month, excuse me, a 9-month moratorium on the acceptance and processing of new subdivision applications that require either land dedication or fee in lieu of land dedication. This is giving us time to complete this evaluation to determine if the current requirement continues to meet the city's needs. Based on the work left, as shown in the previous agenda item, staff is requesting an extension to the moratorium until January 4th, 2027. Obviously, we did put this council bill together with the city attorney's office, and they are comfortable with this extension as well. And like I said before, there are no pending applications for subdivisions, and Director Workman has not had any conversations with any prospective applicants.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
I move to approve Council Bill 7, Series 2026, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village extending the temporary moratorium on the acceptance and processing of new applications seeking approval of a subdivision on first reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Heller?
Yes.
Counselor Aber?
Aye.
Counselor Holen?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
That passes unanimously. Moving on to a discussion about 2027 taxpayer relief. Director Newman.
Yes, thank you. So, a little bit of a refresher. This is the topic that came up during our council retreat back in March. Just a little bit of background on city finances. Right now, our largest revenue source continues to be property taxes, and the current mill levy for Cherry Hills Village, this is only the general fund and the park fund, and not including any GIDs, is 14.722. And we've had no property tax increases since 2005 when the Parks Fund began. And at that retreat, given our current fund balances, specifically in our general fund, we had looked at those balances to determine if it would be possible to budget in taxpayer relief in 2027 and target either a one-time rebate back to residents, a one-time property tax holiday, again, looking just at the general fund and parks fund, not our GIDs, or a combination of the both. In digging a little deeper into those options, the first one being that rebate check, there are some advantages, flat amount paid to each household, but we have also found some additional disadvantages that we did not know until we looked into it further. One being that they are potentially taxable to residents depending on their tax situation. And given that it is a much larger impact on village staff time, including getting those checks out, figuring out what our date for who would be eligible would be, creating that policy, creating that procedure. For the one-time property tax holiday, it is a little bit more equitable, meaning those that have larger property tax bills would see a larger relief in 2027. It's also run by the county, so there's much less risk to the city. There's a process and procedure already in place. Also, that would not be taxable to residents. It would instead be less tax paid. So there would be no 1099s issued, nothing like that coming back. As a quick reminder from when we looked at our long-range financial forecast, also keep in mind that a lot of cities don't do long-range forecasts. If they do, it might be 10 years. Right now, we normally do 15 to 20. This one was a little odd because we wanted to push out 18 years to see what it looked like once our COPs are paid off in 2042. But bottom line, our maximum unreserved fund balance is expected at about 31 million. Total fund balance would be 42 million, and that is general fund only. When we look at our reserves, again, we have a very conservative, very healthy reserve policy, and that still leaves, our unreserved funds, even at the very, very end of our long-range financial forecast, at roughly $11 million. So if we did any taxpayer relief in our 2027 budget, if we wanted to target a full general and property, or full general and parks fund, tax relief, meaning we would not collect property taxes for the general or the parks fund for 1 year. We'd still collect our GID taxes, which are on their own and pay for those undergrounding of those utilities. We would be looking at still having an total fund balance all the way out in 2045 of roughly $10.9 million, so almost $11 million. And that, again, we are budgeting very conservatively on both our revenues and our expenses, meaning we're budgeting our expenses a little bit higher, what we think might hit, versus our revenues being a little lower. Right now, we have our sales tax in at about 2%, even though we're running much higher. We're at about 4.5% right now, year over date, through June, because we just pulled those numbers. So our next steps, really, I'm looking for your direction on what you would like to see included in the 2027 budget. It is budget season. That first round of budgets will be on the dais on September 1st.
Thank you. And because of the way our charter is written, if we'll all recall, it really has to be incorporated into the budget in order for us to be able to do this. So I don't think, after kind of discussions around I know we originally talked about the rebate, is there anyone who is still considering the rebate? No. Okay, I didn't think so. It's just too difficult. In terms of the tax holiday, one question that I had was that, as you noted on your slide, it is a little bit of a windfall for people who just happen to move here at the right time.
It is.
Is this something that we would, and we can't obviously bind any future councils to do anything, is this something that has the potential to happen again in a future year? Meaning, do we have enough surplus for the council next year to potentially consider some sort of tax holiday again, so that it isn't just limited to the people who happen to be here right at this moment?
Yes, and when we look at those unreserved fund balances, again, this is very conservative in expecting our expenses to be high, our income to remain, or our revenue to remain relatively flat. And so absolutely, we could also even, create a policy that says, hey, when your fund balance is double your reserve or triple your reserve, that would trigger let's look at it and see if there's something we would like to do at that point.
Because I think if this was all of the money we felt comfortable, that we could reduce by, I would be less in favor of giving it all at once, right? If this was the total amount that we felt we could spare, I would be more in favor of doing a little less this year and then suggesting to future council that they do something similar. So that's why I wanted to clarify for the record that we feel, at least I feel, very comfortable with these numbers for this year, and I think that there is a possibility, given the state of the economy, to do more in the future. Other comments?
I will say, just from a presentation perspective, staff isn't giving you the presentation tonight because we don't think that that's a possibility. We're only giving you the presentation about this information because that's the task at hand, which
Right.
is trying to evaluate our budget for next year. So yes, let's be clear, I think from a staff perspective, Kelly said it well, there's going to be an opportunity to have a conversation again. We can't tie the hands of future councils.
Absolutely.
And we're really just tackling the budget. But the subtext is, we will probably have an opportunity to reevaluate again in the future.
Yeah. So for anyone who might be listening or in the audience, I just want to make it clear that we're not, taking all of the money that we feel we can live without and giving it to the lucky people who happen to be here right now. It is more equitable than that. What?
Yeah, but if you don't live here now, why would?
Well, because this money wasn't money you paid. It was, if you moved here yesterday, you're getting, the money that we have, and the reason we're able to do that was because of the money that everyone else paid.
That's my point.
Right, they're
Historically.
gone.
That's my-
Historically.
They're gone.
Well, they're not gone.
No, if they are gone, they're either here,
Right.
in which case they're going to get it.
Then they deserve it.
Right, and if they're gone, they're gone, and they contributed. I understand
Yes.
that, but they're gone.
But Mayor's correct, that if I moved into the village last tax year, I will receive a benefit, not a refund, but a holiday that was due to the people who lived here the last 30 years, while I only lived here.
And if
1
you're
year.
the only one who gets it and nobody else in the future, I just feel that it's a little more equitable, that if this was all we had, I would suggest spreading it out to benefit a
Right.
wider variety of people.
But
And
the
the
issue
people
is
who are
this.
here would eventually get it
Yeah, no, I get that. and
the
I see where
same,
you're coming
right?
from.
So,
But it's not all that we have. That's
Right.
number one. And number two, the other thing that's a concern is that it's the taxpayers' money.
yes, it
And the
is.
issue is that running these balances at that point in time, you sit back and make that argument, very, very good, and you're going, so we're going to hold on to this money a little while longer because of equity, and we don't care that we shouldn't be. That's the counter to that.
Okay, but
The
we got to
reason
be
we're looking
careful,
at
so
this
then, yes,
Because
okay.
we're healthy, and the point is that we want to give this money back or to the taxpayers at this point in time.
Yes, agreed,
And Mayor,
yeah.
when I was looking at this, and I've had some discussions with Councilor Holland offline, but, the idea that I'm trying to understand a little bit is, if you took a dent in there and all of those magic trails that we discussed earlier, and, for no other purpose than estimate, than doing the exercise here, say that number came out to $10 million, and you're gonna spend it in the next 5 years. The comment that I received from Councilor Holland is that I have to be able to make sure that either we have enough time to build that fund back up, or that we will still be stable or, okay, having had an additional incremental $10 million expenditure. And, to the first one, my comment is I don't want to turn around and have to be in a situation where I go back and ask people to make up that money. We were flush today, but 5 years from now, we need to implement a fee or tax or whatever it is. I don't think that works well. The question then really turns to me of saying, are we still fiscally comfortable enough to have a fee, an expenditure, come in and still result in good fund balances that will not endanger the city? And I think the answer that I'm coming down to is, yeah, you could make that dent and still be, you knock $10 million off of any of these, and you're still at a very healthy number.
I completely agree. And I've,
Well stated.
yes,
You know, I use, like I say, my exercise of 10. You know, if we came back and said the number to do all those additional parks was $50 million, then we need to talk. But, you know, maybe
Well, and
at that,
to
we
be
don't do
honest,
some
I-
of those parks.
and I think I made this point at the retreat. At some level, when you're talking, if you're talking about that level of expenditure, even if we had the money, I still think we'd need to talk to our citizens, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the idea behind, if we're going to spend very, very large sums of money on anything, I think that having a vote of and that's what it would take, would be a vote of the people, and I think that would be appropriate at that time. And if it's something the people want and support, then they'd be willing to pay for it. And if it isn't, and they're not willing to pay for it, then the city shouldn't do it. And it would just be that clear. So that's why I'm very comfortable with that. And I agree, I've always been sensitive to the fact that, you know, this is not a business. We're not looking to make a profit. That's not why we're here. This is not a charity. People don't choose to give their money out of the goodness of their heart. You know, these are taxpayer dollars that they are required to give us, and they should be used to benefit the people who have paid them. And having them sit for this long and any longer is really a disservice to the citizens of Cherry Hills Village. So I'm 100% in favor.
And Mayor, I would
Absolutely.
just-
And the other
Oh,
thing
wait.
which the director talked about, and again, and we put this long-range financial plan, for which you got special recognition, out to 2045. Nobody does that. No municipality does that. I tried to explain this once to a former mayor of Cherry Hills Village, and he never really got it. I did get it in. Take this thing and fold it after about 10 years, between 5 and 10 years, and just look at the numbers.
Yeah.
We can do this, and then council next year should be looking at it and evaluating again, based on everything that occurs, and maybe some potential projects at that point in time that pop up over the next year.
Yeah.
Mayor, a couple.
And to Mayor Pro Tem Holland's point, the way that we do our budget cycle and our long-range financial planning, you're really looking at it very specifically twice a year that give you that opportunity. So we can even add this, okay, now I want a full review of these fund balances with that long-range financial forecast, broken out a little more to start triggering those things so that, you know, come August, September every year, we can say, hey, our fund balances are high again, or hey, you know, we had a really low sales tax year, we need to watch some of our projects. But that way we're watching those projects as they go forward. So just like city manager said, we will have the opportunity to look at this every year if we want. And then future councils can say, yes, now is the time to make a move, or, you know, hey, now is the time to do this project.
For the record, I think from a staff perspective, staffs everywhere will tend to be more conservative and not want to put the city in a precarious situation. So it's noteworthy that staff is saying to you, we will likely be having this conversation again next year. That shows our confidence in what the long-range financial forecast shows for the health of our fund balances.
Mayor, a couple of questions.
Yes, Councilor Hill.
First of all, nice work and very supportive of it, including the possibility of next year. I think that's the best way to say it. My couple questions I think are related, and you sort of got to it, as did you, Chris, just now. Might sound a little academic, but on page 117, first full paragraph, I think you've got the obligatory safety clause around uncertainty, assumptions, and the like. Is there any math behind that? I know in other sectors, there might be some probabilities assigned to the uncertainty and the like. I mean, our fund balances are so large, to Earl and Rob's point, that it is a tad academic, but it is a good exercise if we have the capability. And I'm not by any stretch of the criticizing.
No.
But you know the old saying, right? No model or forecast is correct. Some are helpful.
Yep.
And so in that vein, what what is the level of uncertainty? Has there been some uncertainty analysis?
So we're working on that. One of the first things we did this year with the long-range financial forecast is add those metrics to now track and be able to start seeing how close and how far we are.
So historical data to feed into the model to help with-
Exactly, to help build, making sure our trends are in line. As for probability and percentages, we just don't quite have those yet.
confidence ratios and the like.
And especially due to the newer way the city started budgeting actuals versus having plugs to make it balance in the past, that kind of skewed the data to where we were
Kind
at.
of had me on hello if you're working on it. That's great. So, then-
Yep, we did add metrics, and come this March, you will see kind of our first full, hey, here's now 5 full years of data with those metrics, how
Perfect.
close we were. Some things we're just not gonna ever get. I will tell you, I have budgeted sales tax low repeatedly, but I'd rather do that
Yep.
in knowing that, okay, hey, we did have a better year. The economy didn't, drop as much as maybe it would have. I do also attend all of the state's state of the economy, watch their forecasts. And, if I ever notice the state saying, hey, we think there's going to be a 1% increase in sales tax, and I'm saying there's going to be a 5%, well, I better have a darn good reason to back up my 5%, right? But when you see the long-range forecasted budget say, oh, look, now we're down to 2%, well, this is why. This is what the state saw. This is what we think will happen, even though that may not happen exactly in our area and budget, will at least be a little closer.
Super helpful. And then second related question, if this is in the materials and I missed it, apologies. You talked about the reserving policy. What is that? And you used the words conservative. What is it based on? Is there a city manager's manual? Is there a norm? Is there a statute? Just can you explain the conservative reserving?
So Cherry Hills Village has its own reserve policy that was created, voted in by council, and it is, in my opinion, on the very.
Right, but what was it derived from? That's my question. Was it?
Well,
That's
it was derived, I mean, we looked at
Yeah.
it. I mean, council had a previous reserve policy, and we looked at it, I guess, right before you guys got on.
Yeah.
And we looked at it at that time. I pushed to actually have more flexibility at that time, because I thought it was really, really conservative.
Okay.
It was.
And I still think that it is at the end of the day. Your question goes to and we did look at some of that other reserve policies that other cities
That's kind of
did.
it, yeah.
And to my recollection, as I recall, no one has a more conservative
Okay.
reserve policy. And I'll just state for the record again, I think we could relax that reserve
I
policy.
think there are some other communities that have the 6 months that we have. I'm not sure if they also include the capital.
The capital,
I think
exactly.
the
and that's what I'm
capital is-
saying.
The capital is really what
To
makes
us,
it
and that is
really conservative.
significant.
Earl, we are no longer alone with the 6 months.
But then there's also
Okay,
the
well,
Tabor
that's good then.
reserves on top of, right?
So our reserve policy is much larger, so our Tabor reserve is
Folded in.
very, very, very covered. Leaps and bounds.
So there are statutory reserves. We go beyond
Very
that.
far
But
beyond
very
that.
small. The Tabor reserves are
Tabor
small.
reserves are 0.5% of your predicted revenue for the year. And we are 50% of or 6 months of our general fund expenditures. So we're much higher.
Well, thanks for addressing those. Again, not a
Yeah,
personal.
no, not at all, no,
And
I
just a
appreciate
further
it.
comment, though, and you've heard me say this before, I'll say it again, just to kind of channel my inner Earl or inner Rob. This is way more important to a council perspective than when we look at the budget. Not that
I
the
acknowledge
budget's not important,
Yeah.
but this is it. And when we do it, and as I've said this before, look at those estimates and the assumptions that they're based on. The escalation rates, the inflation rates, what we think they're going to do. We have a great staff that does a great job of doing that, but there's a lot of talent here at the end of the day, and that's what drives these numbers. And quite frankly, we still, we spent time on it, we still didn't spend enough time, in my mind, on that. We should spend more time, we should spend a lot of time on that,
I agree.
always.
And Earl, I just want to say, I agree with you 1,000%. That's why I wasn't questioning the numbers.
No,
but just
I know.
asking
I'm
about the
just-
methodology.
Yeah, I'm just passing it on, it's an opportunity for me to.
Let's
say
do,
that.
spend more time on that in the future.
So this is not a vote item, right? This is just
Correct.
to provide direction to council. I would, just because I would feel remiss, I know that this is important to him. Counselor Robinson did send me an email expressing his wholehearted support for the tax holiday approach as well. I know that that's something that's important to him, so I wanted to mention for the record that he has expressed his support to me. I believe Counselor McGuire to also be supportive, but she
Yes.
did not
Yeah.
communicate that directly with me the same way that Counselor Robinson did. So with that, I think
Wait.
we can, oh, yes.
Just one more quick comment on next steps. With this direction that we have from you tonight, we will also begin working on a communications approach with this. You know, if we're going to do this, we certainly want our taxpayers to understand, because, you know, it'll be embedded within their overall property tax bill, and if you don't pay attention, maybe you'd overlook it. And so we certainly want our taxpayers to be aware. So we will begin working on that. As a part of that, it should be noted, especially if there's any, you know, reports that go out on this particular issue, this will only apply to our general fund and parks property tax. We do have some GIDs that this does not, two GIDs that this will not apply to. We will still be collecting for the GIDs. So, you know, if you're in those GIDs, you will see the benefit from your general fund and parks property tax. But I would hate for somebody to be surprised and say, wait a second, you said it was a tax holiday, right?
And I think it's also important for people to realize that, you know, your city property taxes are a very, you're not going to, you are still going to get a property tax bill.
Yes.
And when you talked about saying general fund and parks fund, and again, it was in the memorandum, but just to make it clear, and then the proposal is then to for the general fund to reimburse the parks fund, so that it's all really the general fund that is bearing this, because that actually is where our surpluses lie. And then to our communications director, I just point out that you might start with, I think there was a really, really good article on the May Crier on this that you might start with.
All right, so I think we have provided direction to council that we would like to pursue the tax holiday approach, not the rebate approach. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about the 14.722.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to come to the microphone so we can hear in the record. We will take some public comment at this time.
Public comment.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Frida Micklin, 5415 South Grape Lane, Greenwood Village, Colorado. So you're talking about the 14.722. I just feel like it's that the average taxpayer who is not steeped in the knowledge of Tabor might say, look, if our taxes are too high at 14.722, why aren't you folks just lowering the rate? Because if we're paying too much, as opposed to, and somehow it would be good if they understood that because of Tabor, you can't lower the rate because you can't raise it back up. Because in the old days, pre-Tabor, cities, if their pockets were getting too full, would year by year just lower their rates. And then when they needed to, they would raise them again. And that was the way life used to work. And it's intuitive to a taxpayer not steeped in how Tabor works.
I think it's a great point, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but if I were communicating with a constituent about this, I think, and I don't want to speak for the council, but my message would be, you're absolutely right, and that is what has happened. You know, our staff runs a very lean, mean operation. We have operated under budget every year I've been on council for the last 14 years. And I think there is a possibility that our rate is too high. That being said, we need to be careful and intentional about how we approach that issue. And this is the first step, is to look at excess reserves that have built up and to address that by trying to give that money back to the taxpayers. And if that conversation goes on for, year after year after year, I absolutely would expect that whoever is sitting at this dais at that time would then say, look, we've gone however many years, or even if maybe it's not a complete tax holiday moving forward, we can do partial. I think that, that the council should absolutely have that discussion.
About lowering the rate.
Well, if we continue to have these reserves and we're continuing to be able to meet the expectations, the service expectations of our constituents on a lower rate, then I would think, yes, making that reduction permanent would be a discussion people would need to have. But because of Tabor, that's not going to be our first jump, right? If we could just set the tax rate wherever we wanted it each year based on the projection, we would do that.
Yeah.
But given that we can't, we've got to take a little more methodical approach.
Yeah, and this is where the super conservative city finance and manager are going to come in. Before we did that, I would like to see how our taxes hold up in an economic downturn.
Right.
A severe economic, right? So what happens then? And then when we have that track record, then we can make a more informed decision about what we might do.
And all of that, what the mayor said and the city manager said is exactly right. And then someone like me would say, because you'll never give it back. And I have to think about the future, and I don't know what it's going to hold, and you have to assume that we're responsible people, and we're going to do what we did. We're going to give it back. And you want to cut the rate? Run for council. That's what I'd say. Okay? Because the point is that I'd never get it back. We'd never get it back because of Tabor.
Tabor.
Well, but
I just think it's important folks understand.
Yeah.
And that's what our communications director.
But I think to say that this is the first step, and that it has to be a methodical process, we can't just set the tax rate however we want every year. So this is, the first step in this process.
Well, I think what that is it's really an understanding of the ratchet effect of Tabor. That once you ratchet down, it is not easy to go back up without a vote of the people, obviously. But we are trying to be prudent stewards of this, and like you said, if 10 years in a row, we're finding out that this is running a surplus, then maybe at that point, and we've gone through a couple of downturns or, whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is we are doing this as a prudent way that, and unless there really are the people who say they will never see their money, this is putting the proof is in the pudding of, here is some of your money. And you may want more, but let's work in a nuanced manner and not the bludgeon of Tabor, I think is what I would be saying.
The last comment I guess I'll have real quick is that I just want to highlight, I think council probably already knows this, but part of the reason we're even able to have this conversation is because as a staff, the staff does an amazing job about running a lean organization. And I think there's days gone by, and maybe even some city organizations out there today, that have the approach of if you've got it, spend it.
Yes.
And that is not what we do here. And this predates me, Jim Thorpe. I mean, this is a long-term approach, and I think you see the fruits of that approach by even having this conversation tonight. And so kudos to staff.
And absolutely, I think that staff
Yes.
has done a terrific job doing that. The other thing too, as we've gone along, and in this day and age, and probably a lot of communities see that, as we see the Amazon trucks running around here like hell won't have it. And the point is that we're generating a lot of sales tax revenue. And I, for one, believe that I'd rather see more of our revenue derived from there than from our real estate taxes. Why? Because those are variables. You don't have to have that Amazon truck if you don't want to spend the money. I have to pay my real estate taxes. From a philosophical perspective, as a sort of a libertarian conservative, I would much rather be paying that variable tax than this fixed tax that I have to pay. And so from that perspective, if that continues to keep going and we have confidence in it, that would also be a reason to lower that real estate.
And that was
tax.
part of the discussion when we passed that ballot initiative years
Exactly.
back, was that we would see how the sales tax, played out over a few years, and then we would consider it. And, one of a possibility that we briefly discussed was, should we reduce the sales tax amount? And I think during our retreat, the council didn't feel strongly about that for that exact reason, right? Is that, that maybe that's at the right number, and if something needs to change, it maybe needs to change over here. But we just have to be very cautious, and I realize that, people would love more faster, but we do have the long-term welfare of the city to consider. So I think this is very exciting news. I know that there will be several ballot issues around the metro area from many municipalities contemplating increases of taxes of various forms. And so as far as I know, we are the only ones that are in a position, and this position, and I think that is due to the very efficient management by our staff, everything from our, thoughtful road maintenance program, so that we don't get too far down the road, right? That we try to keep repairs manageable, all of it, and the very thoughtful and conservative planning of councils for generations, well predating this one and predating even me. So.
And just for our esteemed scribe out there, exactly what you just said, and we're one of the few, probably the only one in that condition, in that situation, and having completed 3 major capital projects just prior, over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary, and it is because of these people.
So I think you have the direction that you need. Very exciting news. Who's writing the Crier article for, in all seriousness, it's due on the 15th, right? Okay. Well, do you already have your topic?
I do. I mean,
Okay.
since Earl just wrote about it, I'm not sure. If
Okay.
we write about it again, I don't know. We'll have to think about that.
We have a communications person.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
We could always do a staff communication about this and then have, separate.
Okay.
And we can still revisit that.
Okay.
This wasn't decided when we were looking at the editorial content, so.
Got it. Okay. Then moving on to our final issue of the night, the Council Bill 8, Series 2026, submitting to the registered electors of the city a measure amending the Home Rule Charter regarding land use at the coordinated election to be held November 3rd, 2026, on first reading. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. So there's not a whole lot to discuss that hasn't been heard before, so I'll provide just a brief overview for folks listening in, maybe for the first time. But you're well aware that in recent years, particularly the last 3 years, the Colorado legislature has made significant changes to state law to seek to assert control over zoning and planning, land use planning matters that have historically, and according to the Colorado Constitution, been reserved, and the Colorado Supreme Court for that matter, been reserved to a home rule municipalities. And these changes would, if followed, some of them would create significant impacts on Cherry Hills Village. And so at the retreat this year, council asked us to consider a ballot measure to amend the charter that would seek to assert and preserve that local authority to the extent possible within the legal framework of the state and all the attendant processes that follow legal controversies or discussions. So we have prepared that language as directed. To reaffirm that home rule authority. And the language is in your ordinance. It's also up on the slide. Apologies for the small size of the font. But the question would be for the electorate whether or not Article 1 of your home rule charter would be amended to add a new section entitled Home Rule Authority to Regulate the Use of Land. And if you'd like, I can read that language out loud, but for purposes of just a description, it does describe that the authority to plan for, zone, and regulate density, land use, location, and character of structures and real property development generally within the city are matters of local and municipal concern that will be addressed by this council pursuant to the charter and its ordinances, regardless of state mandates to the contrary. So that is the language we have prepared after significant discussion and review internally here with staff. I will note that the ordinance itself contains maybe more recitals or whereas clauses than you're used to. That is certainly intentional to establish the long history and the specific context of Cherry Hills Village, which not only was created, born, raison d'etre of asserting that local control in response to developmental pressures, but the unique nature of the zoning and land uses here that accounted for not only open space, as we talked about tonight, which has continued to be important for the city, but land of a size and layout that facilitated the keeping of livestock and agriculture and other uses of a semi-rural character. So those recitals, or whereas clauses as we refer to them in the vernacular, are quite detailed. I will note that there's a couple things in that ordinance you'll see a little bit different on second reading. There's a typo or two, there's a date that needs to be updated, there's a designation of the clerk as the election official, which actually already happened in a separate IGA approval, but that was because I was on vacation. So we're going to tidy some of those things up, and we're going to add one other in that third recital, the lengthy, at the great suggestion of Councilor Holen, to plug a hole and say, actually, not only did we talk about making a charter, but we adopted a charter. And so those will all be plugged and open it up for council discussion, and I'll provide you the recommended motion.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciated the thoroughness of the recitals, and I totally appreciate that the real meat of this discussion and approval tonight is of the proposed ballot question itself. There will be tweaks and corrections to the recitals, but let's really focus our attention on the now therefore part of this document. And again, I think this is absolutely the direction that we need to move in. I think that this gives the council the support from the citizens of Cherry Hills Village that we need to pursue the course of action that we have been pursuing, because this is what we believe the residents want. This is the opportunity for them to explicitly tell us that this is what they want. I feel pretty confident that this will pass easily, but if it doesn't, I guess that'll be a message to us all. But I really feel that that's important, that our citizens have that voice and say both to us and then perhaps to to the state legislature or any other body as necessary, that they want to exercise their right to self-governance. So do people have any further comments or even any further, whereas corrections that maybe haven't already been brought up?
Just one question, if I might, Mayor. Thank you. So if this were not to pass as worded, and Mayor, I agree with you, I think that's very unlikely, does it have any detrimental impact? I think this is for the city attorney. Does it?
Not from a legal perspective.
Okay. So the fact that we needed it or thought we needed it, but it didn't pass and doesn't have any unintended consequences in terms of use against our arguments relative to home rule authority.
Not from a legal perspective.
And I don't think we need it. I would say we want it.
Well, I think not from a.
Because I think we have this authority, period.
I think we do too.
Well, that's kind of my point. Yeah.
But I do think, though, for the council sitting here next year, and again, we are anticipating at some point in time, some action by the state with regard to the position that Cherry Hills is taking. And if that didn't pass, I think it probably would have an impact on the discussion that council would be having. It's not legally impact, but I think it would have an impact on the discussion.
That's kind of what I was looking for.
If it was me, it wouldn't impact me, but I think it would have
I
impact
mean,
nonetheless. But
I think it would need to be considered that, how strong of a stance do we want to take if our citizens didn't want to take a strong stance, right? So, but I don't think we need this at all. I think this authority exists. It's already in the Constitution. But I want the ability to say to anyone who might ask, this is what the citizens of Cherry Hills Village have told us to do. This is the direction they have given us, and we're going to defend that.
Yep, completely agree.
So-
Yep, thank you.
All right, well, there are no, again, I'm excited about this as well, but if there's no comments, I would entertain a motion.
how about it?
I move to approve Council Bill 8, Series 2026, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, submitting to the registered electors of the city a measure to amend the Home Rule Charter, affirming the city's Home Rule Authority over local land use and zoning at the coordinated election to be held this November 3rd, 2026, on first reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Heller?
Yes.
Counselor Eber? Aye. Counselor Holen?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
That passes unanimously, so thank you for that. We will move on to reports. I'll just have a brief report. I want to give kudos to the police department for their National Night Out. Success as usual. The weather was a little more cooperative this year, so that was thankful. It looked like a good turnout. I continued to see people darting around outside well into the evening this evening, so congratulations to them on such a great event. Also, tomorrow morning is the Metro Mayor's Caucus meeting, and we received word that Channel 9 will be there interviewing some people who volunteered to participate. I think this, I'm not exactly sure, but it sounds like the topic of the story is just the Metro Mayor's Caucus in and of itself. Not a specific issue, but just the fact that it exists and what it is and what we do sounds like what it's going to be.
So interesting, and of course, this was just on first reading what we did, but do you intend to report what we just did at the Mayor's Metro Caucus with Channel 9?
I have this to bring with me tomorrow morning, but I don't know whether it'll be during the part of the meeting that Channel 9 is at, but I guess we'll see. But I did not volunteer to be interviewed, but I think they have plenty of people who did, and evidently part of it will air on next with Kyle Clark is the plan. That's about the amount of information that has been distributed. And other than that, I think that's it for me. We'll start all the way down here with Counselor Fisher.
I don't have a report, but I have a couple of questions. One for Chief Lyons. Is there a way to look at that new dashboard? It was reported on in the work plan. And I know we've heard about it before, but I haven't made a complaint. Can I look at it if where you can follow?
More specifically, which dashboard?
Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm.
Okay, so in the work plan, let me find the page, sorry. So on page 130, 132 of 137, it says that you've completed, sorry, it's really small on.
It's like increased code enforcement efforts, enhanced data tracking, that
You
one?
ensure that the hotline and other communication methods have clear workflows, finalize the public-facing dashboard or web form with photo upload capabilities so that residents can document issues.
Yes. So that system is called Comcade on our end. It's live on the city's website under code enforcement, or under our website under code enforcement.
On the
Yeah,
police
thank you.
website.
On the,
Yeah, I was
on the
just
PD's
curious.
website, under code enforcement, there is a link to that, and there is a public-facing component to it, a module, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just
Yeah.
was kind of curious. I wanted to look it up. Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
for what it's worth, by the way, part of that system allowed for public viewing of who the complainant was, and I changed that just recently.
Yeah, that might not be.
Just to mitigate people's hesitation in filing complaints and concerns. We certainly don't want to create any additional neighborhood conflict. So the complaint is there, but the names have been redacted.
Okay. That was probably a good idea. And then I also had a couple of questions for Emily Black. So our brand-new pond, I know some of this is good, but there's a lot of algae. Is that to be expected, or?
Unfortunately, we struggled with the same thing out here, if you saw right after the ponds were dredged. So we do have, a lot of it is how hot it is right
Is
now
it?
is a
Okay.
struggle. We have a contractor called Eco Resource Solutions that visits the pond at least monthly, sometimes twice a month.
Okay.
And they treat it with beneficial bacteria, phosphorus if it needs it.
Interesting.
Like things that will neutralize what's in there. So we are working on it, but unfortunately with the heat, it's.
That wasn't the same contractor who did the reflecting pond in DC, was it?
Yeah.
It is not the same contractor, thankfully.
Sloppy work. And then, speaking of the heat, Blackmer Pond, I guess is what it's called, the one that's closest to the, new part of, that Kent Denver, right there on Highline Canal. Right by the new construction for the daycare or whatever that Kent Denver's doing, that pond that's, anyway, it's extremely low. Is that well water?
That's part of that Blackmer Lake. That's part
Yes.
of Kent Denver.
Oh, it is?
so
Oh, I thought that was part of
No.
Blackmer Pond.
No, the lake, Blackmer Common is the city, is kind of tucked into
Right,
the.
but not the lake.
Corner, but not the lake.
Interesting. Maybe they're using it to irrigate their, who knows? Okay.
It's the lowest I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, it looks like a movie. Or, me too. I agree. It's low, yeah. All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
No report, just like to say congratulations and thank the chief and as well as staff for night out, whatever the hell it's called. And congratulations to staff as well and to Laura for running the election information thing. Good job.
Yeah, that. Counselor Eber.
Just again, thank you, Chris, your comment about the lean and mean staff and the efficiency. All of you make our lives up here really, really easy. And for the average resident within the city, or not even average, but all the residents in the city, we owe you all a very large thanks for all the hard work that you do. On behalf of them, I will extend that thanks. So thank you all. I just wanted to also make sure everybody knows I'm out next council meeting on the 18th. I will be returning. And other than that, I have no report. Thanks.
Counselor Heller.
Just a thanks again on the tax holiday work, and while no model or forecast is correct, I think your work was absolutely correct, so thank you. The Centennial Noise Roundtable meets tomorrow, so no report.
All right. City Manager.
We'll start with reports, staff reports.
Just that movie night is coming up on August 22nd. We'll be showing the movie Hoppers, so please join us and PTRC, and hopefully Chief will share some of the good weather that he got tonight.
Director Newman.
No report for me.
You guys are sitting out of order, just so you know. The next nameplate is Chief Lyons, but we'll go to Director Goldie.
We have begun our last big CIP project, mill and overlay. We are in Cherryvale right now milling. We'll move over to Martin Lane, and paving will start either late this week or early next week. And then all we have left for the year is concrete, but that's such a small project that has no impact really on the residents. So,
And so mill and overlay, so will it not be another hot in place? We're doing that again?
no, we can't do the hot in place in the residential areas because.
Because it's too big, the machine's.
Yeah, the machine's too big. So this is our traditional 2-inch mill and overlay.
Okay.
Chief Lyons.
Good evening. No, just a community engagement highlight. Thank you for the affirmation on National Night Out. It was a good success. We I don't know the attendance, but I think it was perhaps our most attended year. I think the weather certainly played a part of that. I know we burned through 50 large pizzas donated by a local business, so certainly appreciative of that. And then the next Citizens Police Academy will actually begin this month on the 27th. We are changing the time of the year in an effort to see if that helps with attendance. There's so much going on in the spring. And there is only maybe 1 or 2 seats left. So for anybody that might be listening, early bird gets the worm. Thank you.
All right. City Clerk. About to get really busy.
Candidate packets are live on the website, and nomination petitions are due on August 24th. Also, we got a new application for PTRC. If council recalls, we've had a vacancy on that commission since May. So thank you to Councilor Eber and Councilor Heller for stepping up and doing an interview for that, and we'll be bringing that recommended appointment to the next council meeting.
Great, thank you. Director, or Communications Coordinator, sorry.
That's fine, I'll take the promotion. Nothing to report here, other than to say we still have a vacancy on the Art Commission, so keep putting the word out on that one, that's it.
Thank you. City Attorney.
No report, thank you.
And City Manager.
Just a quick note, if we did want to get a pretty accurate attendance figure for tonight, I'm sure we could use the population-based model and calculate the number of people it takes to eat a large pizza.
People per pizza, and
That's
then we had
right.
50 pizzas. and then-
We would just have to pay our consultant all that money to give us that number. A couple of future agenda items. Just want to let council know that we had reached out to our consultants to help us interpret the Crown Castle data that we as staff certainly struggled with. We got an initial presentation from them. I think we still have some things to work through, but I think it's far enough along. We have added a council discussion for the cell study for September 15th. So get ready for a good old discussion that night. The second thing is related to another future council item, Crown Castle, and I'll think of it in a minute. I'll come back to it. I am out of town starting tomorrow through next Wednesday. And then on September 1st, I will be absent for the city council meeting for the first time as city manager since I've been in this seat. So that is what it is.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that.
And the other item related to the agenda, yes. We are expecting a final list of a short list from CDOT regarding possible solutions for the Bellevue-Franklin intersection. Jay and I will be reaching out to you to get your thoughts on that after we get that short list. We have a good idea of what they are, but we had a discussion, and I think, we just need to get the final information. We will have some time to go over that, though, so there's not going to be some fire sale rush to quickly, do that, so.
What's the ETA for getting that?
I don't know. I'm hoping in a week.
A week, but their consultant they're going to do some further study into the shortlisted list. So it may be month, but before the end of the month.
I think it'll be before then, yes,
Yeah.
but because I think September 30th would be the next time we need to provide some information, right? Wasn't that the date?
that was the
And
date.
so that's why I say we're going to have time to go over it, but just heads up, we're really close for us to start having some of those conversations.
And I know in the original conversations with CDOT, they expressed interest in having some sort of additional public input, probably not a town hall meeting, but something. Is that still in the discussion?
Yes.
Is that something they are going to do? Or
Yes.
Yes, and they're not necessarily, they're looking for our help, I would imagine, but not for us.
Yes,
They-
but I will, they are still working on
Figuring
what
that part
that
out.
might be.
Okay.
I would say it's safe to say they have some options. They have not yet settled on one.
But I would imagine they'd reach out to us to get the
For
word
sure.
out for
We will,
whatever it is.
we'll have, I'm sure, yes, we'll have conversations. So,
Okay.
that's it.
Well, if that's everything, then we will stand adjourned at 8:31 PM. Thank you, everyone. See you in 2 weeks. I guess I should say school starts, Cherry Creek School District starts not this week, but the following week. So look, watch out for school zone.
The Cherry Hills Village starts, or the elementary school starts on the 17th. I believe Kent and St. Mary's also start that week, right around the 17th or the 19th. Brave is later in the month.
Yeah, so, okay.